And we speak with Ali Hasanov, the senior advisor to President Aliyev, who tells us how Azerbaijan is quickly modernizing its military with nearly $1.6 billion in defense expenditures this year alone, and how Azerbaijan eventually hopes to resolve the conflict with Armenia over Armenia's continued occupation of Azerbaijani territory. I'm Ubesh Bandar, and this is One on One. Professor Hasanov, thank you very much for your time. In your important position, working very closely with the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, you've seen the issue of the conflict in the occupied territory of Nagorno-Karabakh very closely. It's a very important issue to you and to the people of Azerbaijan. Do you believe that, given that Azerbaijan has repeatedly stated its intent to negotiate with Armenia to free the captives that are currently held by the Armenian government, the Azerbaijani captives, and to negotiate a sustainable long-term solution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, in your view, do you believe that the Armenian side is willing to negotiate and to work with Azerbaijan and the international organizations to reach a resolution both on the issue of the captives that are held by Armenia and the overall Nagorno-Karabakh conflict?
For over 30 years, we have been fighting for the liberation of the occupied territories of Nagorno-Karabakh by Armenians, as well as the return of internally displaced people who were forced to flee from their homes. In 1990 to 1992, Armenians occupied 10% of Azerbaijan's territory, including Nagorno-Karabakh, and forced more than 1 million people to flee from their homes. In this regard, Azerbaijan has raised the issue in the United Nations, and the UN Security Council adopted 4 resolutions on withdrawal of Armenia from occupied Azerbaijani territories and the return of refugees back to their homes. In addition to the United Nations, the OSCE, EU, European Council, NATO, Islamic countries, and Organization of Islamic Cooperation has issued resolutions on leaving the occupied lands and liberating the occupied territories of Azerbaijan from Armenians. Regrettably, Armenia continues to occupy these lands by taking advantage of the policy based on the dual standards of some states and some international organizations who are supporting them. Why do they not leave our land? Because Armenia has territorial claims against Azerbaijan, and they want to include these lands in Armenia. There are 2 principles of peacekeeping. Territorial integrity of countries is one of those principles. It means the occupied territories should be returned. These lands belong to Azerbaijan, and it is recognized by the United Nations that it is a sovereign territory. The second condition is to return those people who were forced to leave their homes and to provide them a peaceful and prosperous life.
So Armenia is just ignoring all these international organizations.
Yes. Armenia,
Armenia, using double standards in the world, is still ignoring all the requirements of international organizations, including the OSCE Minsk Group meeting, which takes part in the process. We still hope that it will be possible to return these lands peacefully, but Armenia does not allow it.
In addition to that, Armenia has taken some hostages, some captives, and these negotiations are ongoing with Azerbaijan and Armenia, yet Armenia keeps holding on to these Azerbaijan civilians. Why do you think that is? And do you believe that a resolution to these hostages could be reached in the near future?
In this war, more than 30,000 lives were lost in Azerbaijan. More than 30,000 Azeris were killed in the Nagorno-Karabakh war. Thousands of Azerbaijanis are also captured and missing. Armenia still holds those captives and is afraid to give us the information we need to know about the missing people. Although every year all international organizations, including the OSCE Minsk Group, demand from Azerbaijan and Armenia to exchange these captives.
əldə olan əsirləri dəyişdi.
Azerbaijan gave back all the captives, but Armenia still holds Azerbaijani captives. They do not want to give them back.
So Armenia has given nothing in return.
Yəni belə bir qismini
Armenians sent back some of the captives, but they do not want to give back the main part, especially civilians who are not related to the war.
əsir götürüb onları geri döndərmək istəmir.
Absolutely. Sir, this brings up the next issue. There have been many claims that the Armenians are essentially conducting ethnic cleansing in the occupied Karabakh territory. And because of this, as you mentioned before, the number of the refugees and internally displaced has now reached around 1.2 million persons. How is your government dealing with the needs of handling so many civilians who've been forced from their homes?
Əlbəttə çox zorluqla qarşılayırıq.
Of course, we meet the needs of those people who fled from their homes, because every one out of 8 Azerbaijanis is a refugee.
8 milyonluq Azərbaycan indi artıq
The Azerbaijani population is now approaching around 10 million people, and more than 1 million of them are refugees. So every 8 Azerbaijanis should look after one refugee. In that sense, the state is experiencing difficulties. Despite all these difficulties, it has been almost 30 years. These people have been living as a refugee since 1988, and our state has been looking after these people for 30 years.
onların bir çoxu hələ də çadırlarda yaşayır.
Many of them still live in tents, schools, kindergartens, and camps. We have settled them wherever we could, and each of them thinks they will return back to their homes tomorrow or the next day.
30 ildir ki onların geri
For over 30 years, their return has been postponed due to the Armenians' fault.
dəhşətlisi odur ki, ermənilər burada təkcə
The horrible thing is that Armenians were engaged not only in the occupation of the territory, but also in the genocide.
kütləvi surətdə Azəriləri
The Azerbaijanis and Turks either were murdered or forced to flee from their native lands.
o işğal altında olan territoriyalarda
In the occupied territories, no Azerbaijanis or Turks have been left. All of them have been killed or forced to flee from their homes. They destroyed a town called Hocalı and massacred all of its inhabitants.
Professor, you mentioned that the conflict with Armenia, although not quiet on the front lines, is now in its 3rd decade. Are you worried that another military confrontation could result in the future? We saw in April in 2016 brief clashes where the Azerbaijani military was able to gain some strategic positions around the occupied territories. But do you believe that given Armenia's position and opposition to a negotiated solution, that yet another round of fighting could result?
Yəni təmas nöqtəsində hər an
At the point of contact, there may be serious conflict at any moment. I repeat that it can be a serious conflict at any given time, and this conflict can be turned into a major war. Armenians were not only done with the occupied land, they bombard the Azerbaijani villages and civilian settlements from the front line and the high terrain that they have occupied.
2016-cı ilin aprelində də belə oldu.
The same thing happened in April 2016. From those heights, they started firing on the villages inhabited by civilians along the front lines. After the dozens of casualties, the Azerbaijani army was forced to attack those positions.
Öz doğma evimizə, yurdumuza qayıtmalıyıq.
People demand to return back to their native home. In the face of that demand, the Azerbaijani state, of course, is thinking about the liberation of its territory by other means, such as war.
Biz hələ də düşünürük ki,
We still think that Armenians will return these lands peacefully after the international pressure on them. Otherwise, the Azerbaijani army is ready to liberate their lands at any given time. In April 2016, the Azerbaijani army proved their strength and showed that they can liberate its lands if needed. We just don't want any more bloodshed.
Professor, you mentioned the Khojaly massacre, a horrific event where hundreds of civilians lost their lives at the hands of Armenian occupational forces, but it's an event that's not very well known in the West and broadly in the international media. Do you believe that the powerful Armenian lobby in the US and Europe are launching a campaign to tarnish Azerbaijan's international reputation? And how is Azerbaijan working to counter Armenian propaganda in the West?
təəssüflər olsun ki, Azərbaycana qarşı bu savaşı
Unfortunately, this war against Azerbaijan is not only carried out by the Armenian state,
erməni lobbisi
but also by the Armenian lobby, which is strong. Armenia is supported by some international powers, some major powers, foreign circles and politicians who are funded by the Armenian lobby.
Əlbəttə biz də
We also do works to demonstrate the Hocalı genocide, Armenian atrocities to the world, to promote our rights in the international arena. These works occasionally make good progress.
hal-hazırda Xocalı soyqırımını tanıyan
Currently, there are many countries and communities in the world that recognize the Hocalı genocide. There are several states in the United States. The majority of international organizations have expressed their position on the matter and stated their attitude towards the atrocities committed by Armenians in the Hocalı massacre. The Azerbaijani government is doing its best, and we can see the results of this.
və biz bu işi davam etdirəcəyik əlbəttə.
We will continue this work until the Armenians apologize to Azerbaijani people for their brutality and admit the atrocities committed in the Hocalı massacre.
Və Xocalı qətliamında törətdiyi
We do not want to get revenge on Armenians due to Hocalı. We want the world to recognize the Hocalı incident and end that kind of brutality in the future.
vəhşiliklərə bir daha son qoyulsun.
Professor, in your role working so closely with President Aliyev, you know that Azerbaijan is an important strategic ally of Turkey. What is your view on the way forward on Turkish and Azerbaijani defense and security cooperation, given so many conflicts ongoing in the region, in the Middle East, in the Caucasus, and in the Black Sea region? How do you see that cooperation moving forward into the future?
İndi bilirsiniz ki, Türkiyənin də bölgədə
Turkey also has a large number of problems in this region. In addition, many years the PKK and some forces are fighting against Turkey on the Turkish border, and these forces are protected by international forces and major powers.
beynəlxalq güclər tərəfindən o cümlədən
Turkey's territorial integrity is under threat. Since Turkey is a Muslim state, some unfair steps are being taken against Turkey in Europe and in the world. The same thing happens against Azerbaijan. That is why we have to overcome all these problems with Turkey together.
nə Türkiyə, nə Azərbaycan dünya
Neither Turkey nor Azerbaijan threatens any country in the world and has no eyes on the land and wealth of any country. But at the same time, they do not intend to compromise for anybody their international and territorial integrity, as well as their independence and security.
Türkiyə də, Azərbaycan da
Both Turkey and Azerbaijan are trying to establish peace both in the region and the world, and have made all of their accomplishments in this direction. All of the things that I have mentioned, at the same time, our language, historical, religious and cultural bonds give us a basis to be together and work with Turkey.
Əsas verir ki, biz Türkiyə ilə bir olaq, bərabər olaq.
The historical bonds are very strong between the two nations.
Təməli əlbəttə sağlam qoyulub.
Of course, the foundation of these relations is strong, and Turkish-Azerbaijani unity is not aimed at intervening in anyone's territory. It does not aim to harm anyone. It only serves for peace, development, and tranquility among people. Neither the great powers in our region, such as Russia, Iran, nor the smallest countries like Georgia, Armenia, nor Central Asian countries have ever suffered from this unity, brotherhood. It was only for the benefit of those countries.
Would you say that Azerbaijan and Russian cooperation has also been increasing? It was interesting to see that Azerbaijan received a massive military shipment recently from Russia to help Azerbaijan modernize its armed forces.
İndi biz ordumuzu əlbəttə
Azerbaijan has created a powerful army and provided the army with everything needed, including technical and physical demands. We also get it from Israel, Russia, from Europe, from other countries. We purchase things that we need the most. The Azerbaijani army carries out its army affairs on the taxpayers' account and does the work necessary for the country's security. That's why we have good relations with Russia, Iran, Turkey, and with other countries, and it will last in this way. However, Armenians pursue a national historical policy at the expense of others. They get what they need in the form of aid from other countries as taxpayers, not their own taxpayers. They do not get the needs of the army in their own taxpayers' account, but they get it from taxpayers of other countries.
Professor, when it comes to Iran, how would you assess Azerbaijan's relationship with that country? There has been some tensions in the past between Azerbaijan and Iran, but how do you see the relationship between your two countries as it stands today?
İndi Türkiye ile söylediğim
Most of the nuances I have mentioned with Turkey are also related to Iran, because Azerbaijan shares a common religion, similar culture with Iran as well.
bizce din,
There are almost 30 million Turks and Azerbaijanis that reside in Iran. Other issues show that our interests are joint and both Iran and Azerbaijan need peace in the region.
ve bölgede
To be together and have a good relationship is in the interests of Azerbaijani and Iranian states and their people.
ama bazı
However, there are some forces, including Armenia, occasionally support some events in Iran which are against Azerbaijan and wants to show that there is a conflict between Iran and Azerbaijan, that the interests do not overlap, and so on. Foreign forces want to position Iran and Azerbaijan against each other.
yani hem bölgede
There are enough forces in both our region and in the world, in both Iran and Azerbaijan, to put the two countries against each other in this geography.
elbette biz de devlet
Of course, we both are different countries. We both have different interests. But these interests don't mean that the two countries will confront each other. We are a secular state, but Iran has established a state based on Islamic standards. We also have some differences. However, these differences are not an obstacle for our people to live in a friendly environment and will not be in the future. Now, why is our relationship better? There were some problems in the past. In the past, some of the Iranian and Azerbaijani political circles pursued a policy without taking into account of the final relationship of both countries, and that caused problems.
hazırda hem Azerbaycan prezidenti
Both the Azerbaijani and the Iranian president often meet, and they do not simply allow those who want to disrupt relationships between two countries.
It's fascinating to see how Azerbaijan has maintained the strategic balance or strategic equilibrium in the region, Professor. We have positive relations with Russia, Turkey, Israel, improving relations with Iran. How do you see Azerbaijan's foreign policy evolving in the future? The strategic balance is very unique. Not many countries can pull it off.
burada böyledir. Elbette Azerbaycan Cumhurbaşkanı
Ilham Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, and Haydar Aliyev, former president of Azerbaijan, have laid the balance strategy as the foundation of Azerbaijan's foreign policy. Thus, in the region and in the world, Azerbaijan will pursue a policy based on the national interest of the balanced state and the common interest of the opposing state.
bizim için farkı yoktur. Rusya ile
There is no difference for us how the relationship goes between Russia and America. How are the relations between Iran and America or Iran and Russia?
İran'la Azerbaycan
We aimed at finding the common interests of Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, Azerbaijan, and the USA and Azerbaijan, and pursue our policy in that way. We have such an expression: my friend's friend and my friend's enemy is neither my friend nor my enemy. We try to find common interests in the region with each state separately and with the whole world.
ortak noktaları bulmaya çalışırız.
And Azerbaijan's global position is really becoming very clear to many in Europe now as the Trans-Anatolian pipeline is expected to come online in 2018. Natural gas being moved from Azerbaijan to Turkey, and with the rest of the southern gas corridor entering Europe scheduled for 2020. Do you believe that Europe and the rest of the world is recognizing Azerbaijan's global posture as your position as an energy exporter becomes so important to the energy security interest of the West and Europe in particular?
Şimdi Azerbaycan
Azerbaijan is doing something that the European Union and the global world could not do. Previously, there was a Nabucco project, transportation of strategic gas resources of the Caspian Sea to Europe. But for 10 years, they could not succeed. Under the leadership of Azerbaijan and Turkey, this has been done and will be in circulation after 6 months.
liderliğinde bu iş yapılmış.
The Southern Gas Corridor, Trans-Anatolian Gas Pipeline, and Trans-Adriatic Pipeline projects and transporting the natural gas from Shah Deniz Stage 2 to Europe are all very important strategic missions. This is a policy of confidence that the Caspian Sea's rich gas reserves will bring into European markets and Europe's energy security for 100 years.
Ama bu tek değil.
It is not limited to a single project. For the first time, Azerbaijan and Turkey made the policy of exporting the Caspian oil reserves to the European market. The Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline is built from the Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean, and the Caspian's most rich oil resources have been flowing into European markets for more than 10 years, and it provides Europe with alternative oil reserves.
Xəzər dənizinə ilk dəfə olaraq
Azerbaijan is the country that has opened a really important door for transferring oil from the Caspian Sea to Europe and all the oil companies.
tək bu deyil.
It is not limited to oil and gas.
Şimdi Azərbaycan mərkəzdə olmaq şərti ilə Türkiyə
There are also projects in transportation logistics. We have built the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway with Turkey and connected China and London by means of railways. If a container was reached from China to Europe in 35 to 40 days, now it only takes 14 days.
günə ulaşırdısa, şimdi 14 günə ulaşır.
Now Azerbaijan, Iran, and Russia are building the same kind of railway. The second railway crosses in Baku, which starts from the Persian Gulf and goes along China and the Far East.
Yəni doğu, kuzey və batı
North, south, east, and west. There are also highways, railways, sea and airways. Azerbaijan stands in the center of these ways, in the center of transportation, and in the center of this policy.
So you want Azerbaijan to be the crossroads, as it were, of the world.
Evet, öylədir.
We want Azerbaijan to be the center of the world. All these things have been achieved in our independence years during the last 20 years.
Professor, we've been speaking a lot about foreign policy, but I wanted to ask you about domestic issues. The national elections have just been called and they're scheduled for April of this year. Are you confident that these elections will be held freely and fairly in accordance to international standards here in Azerbaijan?
Şimdi biz
Since independency, we have carried out 15 elections, 5 presidential, 5 parliamentary elections, and 5 local municipal elections.
yerli bələdiyyə seçimləri olmuş. Bu seçimlərdə əlbəttə bizim sorunlarımız da olub.
Certainly, we had some problems and some failures in those elections. We have fixed that and demonstrated it to the world. But during all these elections, there was a desire to create fair, transparent elections. The state has always demonstrated that.
olub, dövlət bunu nümayiş etdirib. Son seçim
Of course, each election will be different than the previous one, because we have a great experience and our opportunities are greater.
Şimdi biz o imkandayıq ki,
Now we are able to install webcams in the polling stations and people can observe it transparently. Selection boxes are transparent and everybody is able to see it. We use electronic inks for the fingerprints, thus it would not be possible to vote for the second time.
başqası ikinci gəliş mümkün deyil.
So we apply all globalization technologies to elections. That's why I think that the presidential election will be very different from how it was before, and it will create proper conditions for a transparent, democratic choice.
Açıq, şəffaf seçki
We are going to hold a transparent election, and we have invited observers from all over the world. They can come and observe the elections from the beginning to the end.
Thank you so much for this very insightful conversation.
Mən də sizə təşəkkür edirəm.
I also thank you for asking such deep and encompassing questions.
Thank you.